This is a walkthrough for 7-2 Work Together. This is for the advanced accounting class. We're on page 205 in our red textbook, and we're on tab 7-2 Work Together in our Excel document. This section talks about the allowance method of recording uncollectible accounts expense, and we're going to go through both as a percentage of sales and a percentage of our accounts receivable. So we're on page 205, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, work together, estimating amount of uncollectible accounts expense, journalizing the adjusting entry. General journal pages are provided in the working papers, that's this, and we have a second tab. If you notice, it says 7-2 continued, so also this tab. Your instructor will guide you through the following independent examples. I'm your instructor, so of course I'm going to guide you. Number 4, it says Linum Inc. had net sales of $245,321.09 during the current year. It estimates that the amount of uncollectible accounts expense is equal to 0.5% of net sales. Journalize the adjusting entry for uncollectible accounts expense on December 31st of the current year. Okay, so we know it's going to be December 31st, and it says of the current year, so we're going to put 2014 and December. This should be formatted for you to wrap text. When you do this, if it looks like this, you just come up here and click this little button for wrap text, and it'll fix it. We're going to make this row a little bit taller, so we're going to click between the cells and drag it down a little bit so we can see our year and our date. And of course, this is for December 31st. Now, remember, we're basing this, we are creating the allowance for the next year. So December 31st, our fiscal year is over. We are creating an allowance for the next year. And that allowance is a contra asset, if you recall. And it's our allowance for uncollectible accounts. It's a contra asset. So what it says is, here's our accounts receivable amount, or we have an accounts receivable amount, and that contra asset says, but we don't think we're going to collect this amount. So it automatically takes it away from our assets. So what we need to do is account for it and turn it into an expense. So we're going to calculate how much it's going to be. This is our percentage of net sales. So we look at our sales from the prior year. So we're looking at our sales from 2013. Now, we can do this two ways. We can either do the math right here in the debit box, or we can do the math off to the side. So we're going to do the math off to the side real quick so we know how much our allowance should be. So we're going to, well, like I said, we're going to do the math in Excel. Excel is a spreadsheet. It does math for us. So hit the equal sign. Our sales for last year, our net sales were $245,321.09. Now, we want 0.5% of that. So in order to convert a percentage into a decimal, we move the decimal 2 places to the left. So now it's going to be 0.005. So we should have $1,226.61. Since this is money, we'll hit this comma button up here, and it'll round it for us. So $1,226.61. For the 2015 fiscal year, that's the amount that we think we will not be able to collect. So we're going to come over here to our account title. And if you recall, we need to establish an expense. So where we need to add to our collectible accounts expense. So we're going to do uncollectible accounts. If I could type today, this would be great. Okay, uncollectible accounts expense. We have no source document for this, and we don't use our post ref till after we post the ledger. And by the way, if you have this enable content bar at the top of your screen, go ahead and click that button for me. Thank you. So how much was our debit amount? Our debit amount was for $1,226.61, which was 0.5% of our net sales. So that's our debit. Our credit is going to be for the allowance for uncollectible accounts. As you recall, this is a contra asset. This is reducing how much we think that we're going to collect. So the credit needs to be indented. So we're going to come up here, click this increase indent line, and our debits and our credits have to match, or they have to be equal. So our debit is for $1,226.61, and our credit is for $1,226.61. Okay, so we did number 4. We're going to move on to number 5, which I will read to you in just a moment. It says the aging of accounts receivable for Kirsten Inc. as of December 31st of the current year and estimated percentages of uncollectible accounts by age group are presented in the working papers. We're going to go to our next tab. It's our 7-2 continued. And this is what they're talking about. This is our aging for accounts receivable and how we're going to collect that. And this is where we're working on our allowance as a percentage of accounts receivable instead of net sales. Calculate the estimated balance of the allowance for uncollectible accounts. Then journalize the adjusting entry for uncollectible accounts expense. The balance of allowance for uncollectible accounts on December 31st before adjusting entries recorded is $63.24. So if you recall from our lecture, when we're doing our allowance as a percentage of net sales, whatever balance was in that account at the end of the prior year, we're going to add that to this $1,226.61. So if our balance in our allowance for uncollectible accounts at the end of the fiscal year was $63.24, we would add those together. And so now we'd have like $1,285 or $90, something like that. But if you recall, for when we're using it as a percentage, or when we're calculating it as a percentage of accounts receivable, we need to get to our estimated amount. So whatever that balance is, we back out, which I'm going to show you in just 1 second so you can see. Okay, so first we need to see what percentage of each of these we think is going to be uncollectible. So looking at our aging, we're looking at our aging report, and we need to calculate how much of each of these categories we feel we will not be able to collect. So we already have a percentage. This is based on prior experience. We think we won't be able to collect 0.1% of our accounts that are not due yet. And so remember, we know if they're due or not based on their sales terms. So we're going to say that we have net sales of 30 days. So not yet due would be between day 0 and day 30. Maybe we haven't sent an invoice yet, or after we've sent the invoice, we start our countdown. So between days 1 and 30 of being due. Now, 1 through 30 days, this is the amount that it's overdue. So this is days 31 through about day 60, right? So of that, this is how much is overdue between 1 and 30 days. This is percentage we can't collect. If you come down and look at over 90 days, so these are invoices that we sent out at least 120 days ago if our sales terms are 30 days. It's only $350, but we think that we won't be able to collect 50% of that. And again, that comes from prior experience, as well as from prior analysis. So we want to calculate, we have a percentage, but we need to calculate a dollar amount. So we come over here, we're going to hit the equal sign, we're going to select a dollar amount, we're going to do our multiplication symbol, which is an asterisk, and we're going to select the amount that we want to multiply by. In this example, it's 0.1%. Now, we could choose to do this manually and multiply it by a decimal, but this column is already formatted as a percentage, so we can just multiply it by that percent. But let's see what happens if we multiply it by decimal. So to convert a percentage to a decimal, we have to move our decimal place 2 places to the left, so it's 0.001, and we end up with $8.62. Now let me show you why I'm going to actually just click this cell. So we get rid of that, and I'm just going to click the cell. So now it's a formula, and that formula will change as I drag it down. If I left that 0.1%, let me show you that the answer is the same. If I left that 0.001%, I have to change it every time I move it, right? So this should be 0.002. Well, by just selecting the cells that I want, I can hit enter. I can select the cell, the bottom right hand corner, this is called a fill handle, and I can drag it down to get all of the answers that I want. So yay, that was super convenient, right? Well, now we need to total this together so we know how much we think that we should, or how much our estimate is, what we say should be in our allowance for uncollectible accounts. So we can do this 2 ways. We can either hit the equal sign, we can type the words sum, select the cells we want to add together, and we get $211.76. Or the other thing we can do is we can click this auto sum button. Maybe. We can click this auto sum button, and the auto sum says, okay, I think these are the cells that you want me to do. Now, if for some reason we didn't want these cells, we could go up here and adjust it. Say we just wanted these 2, but we know we don't, so we want all of these. All right, so $211.76. If we look at this math, though, we have 2 cents here, we have 1 cent here, 9 cents here, and 5 here. It would be $211.77. The reason that it's not is because of rounding. There's a setting in Excel, and it tells it how many decimal places to carry it out. It may be 6. So it's looking at those 6 decimal places before it rounds, rather than using it as money and rounding at 2 decimal places. And so if you're off by a penny due to rounding, I'm not going to get upset with you. But I'm just going to correct this so it matches what our answer key says. $211.77. Now, this, I say now a lot, don't I? Okay, this current balance of allowance for uncollectible accounts. That's where we read and it says December 31st, before we did our adjusting entries, it was $63.24. Now, if this was, again, going back to what I already explained, if we were doing a percentage of net sales, we would take this $63.24 and add this $1,226.61. But we're not doing that way. We're doing it as a percentage of accounts receivable. So this is how much money we want in this account. This is how much money we have in this account. So we need to do a little bit more math. We're going to subtract. So we put in our equal sign, select our first number, hit our minus button, select our second number. We get $148.53. Okay, so we need to adjust our account by that much, which means that we need a journal entry. So we come over to our journal. Again, we're going to put in the date because this is the very first entry. So we need, this is the first entry in our journal. So we need to have a year and we need to have our month. My wrap text is on, and so we don't need to change that. And this says 12, but it's supposed to be the 14th. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that. So wrap text is on. It's the 31st of the month. All right. I need to, because I know my credit's going to go to the allowance for uncollectible accounts, I need to match my revenue and expenses. And I say I'm not going to be able to collect $211.77, but I only have $63.24 in my account, which means that I need to add more of an expense as well for $148.53, right? So this is going to be our uncollectible accounts expense. My cell is a little bit too small, so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. I did that by double clicking between my cells, and it auto fits it. I don't have a document number. I don't have a post draft, but my debit is going to be for $148.53, and I got that amount from here. And if I drew a T account right now, which I may be able to do, let's see if I can draw you a T account right now. I can do it, And I want a left border, and we're going to call this one, I need a merchant center button. We're going to call this the allowance for uncollectible accounts. This means that I already had that amount in there. Remember, this is a contra asset account, so credit's going to be my normal balance. I had $63.24 in there. And I want $211.77. I'll create another one of these for my expense account as well. Put this here. This is actually going to be the uncollectible accounts expense. And in order to know how much money is already in there, I would need to go look at my worksheet, which they don't give us a worksheet for this. So let's just assume it's $148, and we're not going to say 148. That's not a good number. We'll assume it's $63.24. It could be more than that, but it shouldn't be any less than that because these need to match up. And actually, it's probably a lot more than that. We'll say that it's $563.48. Okay, perfect. So uncollectible accounts expense, we need to increase that amount. So we're going to increase it by $148.53. We're going to add these two together. And so it didn't actually like my formula clearly. So this is our new balance, is $712.01, right? We can add these together. Here's our new balance. Uncollectible accounts expense. Well, that's not the one that we're worried about how much is in there. We're worried about how much is in our allowance for uncollectible accounts. So we need to do our credit. We did our debit. Our debit was to uncollectible accounts expense. We need to do our credit. So allowance for uncollectible accounts, and it's going to be $148.53. So we can come over here to our T account, and notice this was a credit. Since this is a contra asset account, we increase it with a credit, so $148.53. Let's add those two together. $211.77. This is our new balance. And if we look right here, And actually, to indicate that this is a balance, we need this. Okay. And if we look right here, this is the amount of money that we want in that account. This is the amount of money that we have in that account right now. All right. So that is the walkthrough for 11-2 Work Together. I hope that the explanation I gave in addition to example helped you. Good luck.